This is a work of fiction. Any similarity to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events, is purely coincidental. Mitigation factors raised by the accused himself or the defense counsel.
So Morgan, the trial of the murder case we are handling is almost nearing an end. Are there anything else we as the defense counsel need to do before the sentencing takes place?
Yes, Tanya. The next step before the sentence is passed will be the mitigation by the accused himself or the defense counsel, followed by aggravation by the prosecution.
So what will be the mitigating factors considered, Morgan? It would be great to discuss before we decide on the suitable ones.
For mitigation, as per allowed under Section 176(2)(r) of the Criminal Procedure Code, the first factor is the age of the offender. A youthful offender will be best tried to be kept away from the prison. For example, in the case of Tao Su-peng versus Public Prosecutor, the court decided to allow rehabilitation of the young offenders with 2 sureties.
So, elderly offenders will be considered on health and age factors, right? Does this mean they will be given any special treatment?
Yes, Tanya. However, in some cases like Public Prosecutor versus Mustafa bin Abdullah, it was stated that the condition of health must yield to public interest for a consideration of mitigation. Moreover, as per the case of Public Prosecutor versus Haytija binti Mansur, if the gravity of an offense is serious, priority will be given to deterrence and public interest rather than the age factor.
Well, secondly, we have the record of the offender for mitigation. This factor can be used to obtain a lighter sentence if the accused is a first offender with no criminal record. This was applicable in the case of Shanmuganathan versus Public Prosecutor.
You are right, Tanya, but if consideration is given for a clean record alongside a serious crime, public interest will prevail over a clean record. As in the case of Njiatak versus Public Prosecutor, there was absolutely no mitigation of clean record due to the seriousness of the offense committed.
Thirdly, we can mitigate on the effect of conviction or sentence on the accused person. This includes the effect on another person not related to the offense, such as aged parents supported by the offender. Mitigation under this factor may also be on the fact that the accused is the sole breadwinner of the family. Just like in the case of Ralph versus Public Prosecutor, this factor may arouse sympathy and lighten the sentence.
Absolutely. Fourthly, mitigation may be on the circumstances before commission of the offense. This includes offending based on need rather than greed, unplanned offense in the spur of the moment, and the physical and mental health of the offender leading to the offense. This was effective in Tunku Mahmud Iskandar versus Public Prosecutor, where the court set aside the sentence for the act committed, which was at the heat of an insulting behavior.
Apart from that, we also have the mitigation based on the health of the offender. This will help to obtain a lighter sentence, as severe punishments may cause suffering. This was even accepted in the case of Public Prosecutor versus Taib bin Ali, where the accused state of health, being a diabetic, was taken into consideration.
Yes, but if considered with a serious crime, this mitigation may fall short, as the health shortage will be disregarded. Just as in the case of Public Prosecutor versus Wang Akin, health factors were not considered because of the serious act.
Ah, I see. So next, we have the mitigation based on the cooperation with police at all material times. It's actually one of the ways of an accused person genuinely showing contrite or regrets. It's somewhat like a way the accused intends to make amends. As it saves considerable public money and time, this may be considered by the court.
True, Tanya. This is proven through the case of Public Prosecutor versus Liu Chang-hak, where a plea of leniency was rejected due to the accused not cooperating with the police and also not returning any of the stolen property.
Well, what else can we use as factors of mitigation, Morgan?
The plea of guilt. This is another way of the accused shows regret, where the public interest in money and time of the prosecution as well as the court being saved is abundant. This is because the limited resources could be utilized or directed to where it is most needed. You may refer the case of Kesavanamik Sendaran versus Public Prosecutor, where the court discounted 20 to 30% off the sentence as the accused contributed substantially to the public perception that justice had been done.
I also remember that we can mitigate on the impact of the conviction. This will be on the destruction of profession, dignity and respectable honor of the accused due to conviction where he loses the capacity to lead a respectable life afterwards. This was however not considered in the case of Public Prosecutor versus Vijay Raj, as it was held that the loss of job and humiliation were a substantial part of the punishment given.
Additionally, there are other factors too that may be used for mitigation, Tanya.
What are they, Morgan?
We can also mitigate that the offense is already stale, no violence used, no injuries inflicted, and also the status of the offender, such as being remorseful of the act committed, family history or period of remand.
That was a great discussion, Morgan. We can definitely use some of these factors for mitigating before our client is given his sentence.
Exactly, Tanya. Let's do all we can and hope for the best for our client. It's almost time. I guess we can call it a day then.
Definitely, Morgan. It's already late now. See you tomorrow then to finalize on the factors to mitigate for our client.
Aggravation factors raised by the prosecution. Lee, the murder case we are acting as prosecutors for has reached the stage of sentencing. We have to start deciding about how we can aggravate for a harsher sentence to be imposed on the accused.
Well, time really flies, Abdullah. It seems like we just took up the case, but now we are almost waiting for the sentence of the court. I guess we better brainstorm on all possible aggravating factors before we decide on relevant ones applicable for our case.
Excellent suggestion, Lee. Let's go through all the factors in one quick go then.
Sure thing. To start with, we as the prosecutors are not allowed to specifically ask for a term of imprisonment or something like that. We may only suggest appropriate sentences. So after the mitigation is complete, we will be asked by the court for any reasons to give a harsher punishment. This is where the aggravating factors come to play to press the court on deciding whether to give a deterrent sentence or not.
Exactly. So the first factor we have for aggravation are previous convictions or antecedents. Under this factor, if the offender has a bad record of previous offenses, he may suffer the risk of getting a heavier sentence. This may be affected by previous convictions and charges pressed on the accused in the instant case. This was accepted by the court in Public Prosecutor versus Shafar bin Dad, where the sentence was enhanced to 18 months due to 5 previous convictions of the accused.
Secondly, Abdullah, we have the aggravating factor on the serious nature of the offense. In this sense, the court will take it seriously due to the rampancy of the offense committed. This is as to teach a lesson to the offender and ensure that he or she does not repeat it again. As an example, in the case of Lee Chameng versus Public Prosecutor, the court considered the rampancy of the offense, which was an armed robbery. A heavy punishment was served consisting of imprisonment, whipping and fine.
Next to that factor, we have the factor on the position or status of the offender for aggravation. This factor can work in 2 ways, such as an offender of high ranking should be given a heavier punishment, and also consideration of those who always lend a helping hand.
Yes, Abdullah, for this factor, there are 2 relevant cases which I personally know to be applicable. First, the case of Naidu versus Public Prosecutor, where the prosecution used the offender's position against him and the federal court decided to enhance the sentence as a person of high position, as the offender should be responsible of being a good example to the public.
Then I believe the second case you might be referring this factor to is Tansri Abdul Rahman MOHD Noor versus Public Prosecutor. This is quite a famous case where, despite the fact that the offender was the head of police serving a lot to the country, law and peace controlling, the court still sentenced him for 2 to 3 months of imprisonment.
Exactly. Fourthly, we have the aggravating factor of difficulty in detecting such offenses. This is regarded as a powerful factor precipitating a heavy sentence. This is a major factor in cases dealing with crimes that are eventually uncovered through painstaking investigation. We can safely say that this factor tilts balance heavily in favor of being served with deterrent sentences. Just like in the case of Public Prosecutor versus Lee Chameng, where the offense was one that posed serious difficulties in terms of detection and apprehension. As such offenses were easy to commit and difficult to detect, the court accepted the aggravation as it could become rampant if not firmly dealt with.
I agree, Lee, that is a great aggravating factor too. Other than that, we have the manner in which an offense is committed. This represents the criminality of the accused, criminal enterprise, criminal design or syndicated crime. Heavy sentences could be imposed if this aggravation is considered, and in certain fraud cases, court may consider this factor too. This was affirmed in Jajinder Singh versus Public Prosecutor, where the appellant was sentenced to 2 years of imprisonment as the court took it seriously for the offense of giving false statements.
Similarly, Abdullah, we also have the aggravating factor of the degree of violence used. If force is used on the victim of the offense, the offender will be given a harsher sentence. However, if the offender treated the victim very well, the court may consider to give a lighter sentence. This was applicable in the case of the Arapandi and Bala and another versus Public Prosecutor, where the accused kidnapped a boy and asked him to stay put in a drain. The court considered it as a bad treatment of the victim.
If I'm not mistaken, that was the kidnapping case that occurred in Aller Sutter, right? That is really cruel of the kidnapper to keep a young boy trapped in the drain. Another case that closely resembles this is the case of Public Prosecutor versus Mudsafian bin Abdullah, and another where the accused had wounded the victim by strangulation using a rope. Due to the degree of violence used, the court gave the accused the maximum sentence.
Oof, that is really violent. Apart from that, we have the factor on the effect a deterrent sentence will have on the accused as well as on the others. A heavy punishment will be imposed if this aggravating factor is accepted by the court with the justification of being a lesson to the public not to do the same offense. Generally, it acts as a deterrence, especially in cases involving drug offenses, vehicle theft, kidnapping, firearms and robbery. The case of Public Prosecutor versus Tao Cheng best applied this aggravating factor as it involved the unlawful possession of firearms and ammunition. This induced the court to hold on appeal for an imprisonment sentence enhanced to 3 years for each offense.
Well, Lee, additionally there are 2 more aggravating factors the court may consider too in deciding for a deterrent sentence.
Is it, Abdullah? What are the 2 other factors that we have left out from our discussion?
One of them is public interest, Lee. This factor can be aggravated to ensure that the court is reminded to stay committed on ensuring that there is no any effect on the public confidence in the administration of justice. The court usually strikes a balance between the interest of the respondent and public interest. This factor was submitted in the case of Public Prosecutor versus Muhammad Saifullah, where the public interest was requested to be given paramount consideration. Due to this aggravation, the court decided that the offense committed deserved a deterrent sentence.
That's a great factor to be aggravated, Abdullah. So what is the last factor then?
National interest. This aggravating factor is applicable to ensure that interests of citizens, nation and the country are taken into consideration before deciding on the sentence. This factor is particularly helpful in cases of violation of declared national interests, which possibly could result in serious external consequences. It was decided in the case of Public Prosecutor versus Tengku Adnan Mansur that the national interests outweighed the accused's fears on assets being made public. Thus, his application to have proceedings heard in camera was refused as it would be contrary to the national interests and interests of justice.
Awesome, Abdullah. So that marks the end of our discussion. We have to now research on the relevant aggravating factors we could use to ensure that the accused in the murder case we are handling is served with a deterrent sentence.
Absolutely, Lee. Now if you would excuse me, it's high time I make a move to meet my potential client for a narcotic case. We'll meet and decide on the aggravating factors tomorrow afternoon over lunch, Lee.
Definitely, Abdullah. I'll be off too. See you tomorrow.
References. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.